How do we deal in live performance with things that come up that we're not expecting? And the answer to that really is in the rehearsal process and the preparation. So in any live performance, that's part of the joy. The joy and the excitement for the audience and also for the performer is this is only happening one time in this particular way. We're here together in this moment. It happens all the time in theatre that things go wrong. A light goes on fire. Somebody stumbles into the auditorium drunk. Somebody falls off the stage, right? These things happen all the time. So how do we deal with them? And part of that is developing confidence in your work and your craft enough to be spontaneous to the moment. And there's a number of ways we can do that. In terms of a very concrete example, I'm going to tell you about a situation that we frequently had at the Pop-Up Globe in New Zealand when we were doing Measure for Measure, which in the case of this particular production, a la Pop-Up Globe style, was a rollicking comedy and had a lot of music and singing in it as well. So there was an awful lot, and dancing, there was an awful lot that we had to be doing. In the final scene, everyone was on stage and the lines were such that they weren't easy to remember. They would overlap. One person's talking, another person's talking, then they go on to another subject, then they come back to that subject. So it was hard for all of us to remember that scene, and the high comedy of the scene really required that we go boom, 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 boom without missing a beat. And the energy that would develop between the performers on stage with this increasing sense of attention to making sure that you hit your marks, do your lines in the right timing and speed and energy, and also the joy of the humor involved and the fact that we were a very close company working together over several shows for quite a period of time meant that people would love to try and make each other laugh in that final scene. And this is called corpsing, when you break out of character to laugh on stage. And I was sometimes at the center of this melee as my character Aeschylus, becoming more and more indignant, confused, and trying to command the situation. That was what my character was doing. And I might be surrounded by people with their backs to the audience, laughing out of character at me, or to me, or trying to get me to break character. And the way that I dealt with it was not to push away the energy that was on stage. So this is really important. It's how can you lean into what's actually happening and use it to your advantage. So the way I dealt with it was to use all of that through the lens of character as fodder for greater indignation. So I would take that intensity and I would just become more and more indignant, which would make people laugh. And then, of course, the temptation would be for me to laugh. But here's the tip from that. Focus when you know what you're doing and you have a strong desire to communicate, which is a very important part of any kind of presenting. You have to have a real desire to communicate and a passion behind what you're saying. And even if you're saying something you have to say and might not innately feel passionate about it, in the rehearsal of preparing for the presentation, you have to find connections for you that make you really engaged with what you're doing. So that in the moment, if something happens, you have these touchstones that you can go back to and use the energy of what's happened to further propel what you know you're supposed to be doing in that moment. And that doesn't mean being rigid. It actually means being flexible, but within a framework that you've already prepared and worked on. Really knowing who you are and what you're conveying. So this is applicable to, of course, character in theatre, but also to you being yourself in front of a group. Please like and subscribe, and do post in the comments below anything you might have on this subject or any questions you might like me to answer. Thank you so much.